Good evening, everybody. So good to see you all again. It's Thursday, the 28th of September, 2023. And this is the fourth video in this series that I'm currently doing on talking about my family, my ancestors. And I am going someplace with this because my mother's family were a hard bunch of people. They were survivors. They did what needed to be done, and they didn't have a lot of time and patience for little kids wanting to help out. It was like, just go someplace and amuse yourself. And it took me a long time to figure out how to deal with myself emotionally because of that, which is why I want to talk about the effect that my ancestors genetically and behaviorally had on me. And the response I've been getting is amazing. Some people that didn't know their parents, one or both of them, people that never got to meet their grandparents, didn't know anything about their grandparents. It's all been very positive. So I'm going to keep yammering on about all of this stuff. But I want to go back to my great-grandmother Ferguson. She was my great-great-grandmother on my mother's side, my grandmother's mother. And she died not telling the truth. She swore on a stack of Bibles that she was Scottish. But when she passed away, and she was in her 90s when she passed away, she had a paisley shawl that Mom and Grandma Hart knew was very old, but they didn't know the history on it. They didn't know where it came from. And there's a small museum in Calgary called the Cost House, and they wanted to donate that. We're talking, she died when I was about 10, so it was a bit ago. But because they had been in Calgary, I was born in Calgary, and the Cost House is in Calgary. But the Cost House wanted to do research before they would display it in public, and they did that. And the report came back that, in fact, that was a handmade shawl from Northern Ireland, the part where the Catholics and the Protestants were killing each other, and my family were Protestants. And they actually left in the middle of the night. My great-great-great-grandparents left in the middle of the night, and the only thing they took with them other than their daughter was the clothes on their back. And the mom had this shawl to cover herself with. But by that time, Grandma Ferguson had passed away. And when the parents left, they went to Scotland. They ran to Scotland for safety. And Grandma Ferguson was probably 3 or 4 years old at that time. And so I don't know if she had any memory of what happened in Ireland or not. It was probably pretty fuzzy. And she blocked all that out of her mind and swore up and down and every which way you can imagine that she was Scottish. So that was Grandma Ferguson. So back to my Granny Hart. Stories about Grandma Hart. She was quite beautiful. I'm sure in her younger days had auburn hair, and she had a patch about so big that always came across as blonde. It was a natural thing that she had. And she was about 5'8", And she probably weighed about 160, 70 pounds, and she didn't have an ounce of fat on her anywhere. And the things that that woman did, she had 4 children. Her second child was born 3 months premature and umbilical cord strangulation. And it was February. And like I said before, they were 24 miles from town. Now, she understood, or she figured out, that she was actually going into labor ahead of time. So she said to my grandpa, whose first name was Carl, she said to her husband, Carl Hart, she said, you better go hook up the team and the big sleigh, because she said, I'm going into labor. So Grandpa did that, and they were on their way into town. And I'm not sure how far. I could never figure out. I always looked for it, and then I could never see it. There was a coal mine, and all the people in the district used to get their winter supply of coal from that mine. And there was a little guy that operated it, and he had a shack that he lived in, and he dug the coal out by hand. But she couldn't get to the hospital. She said, you got to stop at the coal mine. And she had her baby in the little shack, got herself all sorted out, and Grandpa said, well, come on, I'll take you into the hospital. She says, there's nothing they can do. I've had the baby. He's all taken care of. He's breathing. He's, you know, we've done the best we can do for him. She said, just turn around and take me home because we got chores to do. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with those old-fashioned cook stoves, the coal cook stoves, but they had that warming oven above the cooking area, which was above the oven. And she kept that 3-month premature baby alive in that warming oven in her kitchen cook stove. That's how she did it. And I grew up with Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray was a little slow. He went to school with everybody else. He learned to read and write. He was completely capable of talking. And he was one of the sweetest, most hardworking individuals that you could ever imagine. And he was with me his whole life, my whole life. Well, I shouldn't say his whole life. I didn't know him until we were going out to the farm every spring, so that Mom could help with the chores and the field work. But back to Granny Hart. So during the dirty 30s, Grandpa planted one wheat field 7 times, and it blew away every time. And finally he said, I'm not going to do any more planting because I want to keep my seed for when this drought is over. And Grandma kept the family alive with raising chickens, which she kept. They were egg-laying chickens predominantly. And so she took eggs to the market, and with the 18 head of cows that she milked. And when, I don't know if you've ever milked a cow, we had cows at my facility in Alberta, but we had a couple of cows because we sat 12 people at the dinner table. Our food bill was higher than a lot of people's income because we had so many people that were coming to study. Anyway, I've tried to milk a cow, and I'm telling you, for somebody single-handedly to milk 18 head of cows twice a day, that's a big deal, a really big deal. And I couldn't do it. I could hardly milk one cow. Anyway, so when you have 18 head of cows like that, you've got a lot of milk because the only thing you're selling is your cream. So what she did was they had a big hog pen, which I was allowed to go see the hogs, but I was strictly forbidden to go into the hog pen for that, because pigs are not the nicest critters. They'll eat you alive if they get a chance to do that. So she fed hogs. Everything ate a combination of chopped oats and barley mixed with milk. The dogs ate it. All the cats got it. Who else got it? The pigs got it. The pigs were big consumers of it. The chickens got it. Everybody lived on that. It was called chop. When you hammer oats and barley together, it makes like a very, very coarse. It's not flour. It's much coarser than that. But when you mix it with milk, it will feed everything, which it did. So between milking 18 head of cows twice a day and processing all that milk and raising the chickens, and they often raised turkeys as well, and she would also help out with the field work. And one of the things that she would do is drive 4 abreast on a binder. Now a binder is it has a big reel on it, and it knocks the grain down and cuts it, and then it's processed after that, which is where you get straw. And you have to go pretty quick. The horses had to trot to run the reel on the binder fast enough that it worked properly. And so those 4 horses would only have a 4-hour shift. And then they'd go in for lunch, which Granny Hart made the lunch, thank you very much, took the second group of horses out and worked another 4 hours. So she made breakfast, she made lunch, she made supper, collected the eggs, fed all the critters, milked all those cows, and she made bread a couple of times a week. She would cook 6 loaves at a time. She always had cookies and donuts and cakes and jelly rolls. It was amazing. They don't make people like that anymore, at least not that I'm aware of. And I certainly couldn't do that, even in my prime. Yeah, I could ride 10 horses a day and teach several lessons a day and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and, you know, not go to bed until 11 o'clock at night. But I wasn't doing what she was doing. And it, you know, when I stop and think about what that woman did and what she accomplished, and then I just have to talk about that, because we whine and snivel if we have to look after the household and do the laundry and the cooking and raise children and have a job on top of that. And we have a right to, you know, whine and snivel a little bit about that. But I can imagine that women in the Ukraine and in Russia and that part of the world, and the women that are on the in the deserts and things like that, they're not having a good time either. They have a pretty rough life. But when a person is in the position that I am at, being 80, and if I go back to when I was 4, 5, and 6 years old, it was pretty normal what was happening. It was really normal, and yeah, I just have to talk about it. I just have to talk about it. I see I got a piece of hair sticking up here. So anyway, that's my Granny Hart story. My mom was very much like that. My mom could lay down more hay with a with a tractor and a mower than anybody everybody knew that there wasn't a guy in the country that could lay down more hay in a day than she could. And then my Uncle Ray, with his team, Pete and Mike, he'd come along with a horse-drawn rake and rake all that up. And then they got really fancy, and their first baler was a round bale. And they put up 10,000 bales one year, and they didn't realize, because they had never done baled hay before, and it wasn't quite dry enough, they lost 10,000 bales of hay because they brought it all home and put it in one big stack so that it was easy to feed the 200 head of range cattle, which were all undercover, by the way. They weren't out in the snowdrifts. They had a big, huge area that was all undercover, but they could also get outside. So, yeah, it's such a different life, such a different life. I hope you're enjoying my jaw flapping. I had some excitement today. UPS shipment of the last 2 bull paintings of Hard Labor arrived in Oklahoma, and the family unpacked them, and they're absolutely delighted with them. I started that process in just the 23rd, 26th of June, and they just received the 2nd and 3rd paintings from that group. So it's been an exciting day. Yeah. Anyway, good evening. I love you all, and thanks for being here. Bye.